Bleach Can't Fear Your Own World is the final chapter in the Bleach saga, and the most important. The ending of Bleach should be this chapter, and not just hell, as it leaves the Bleach world in a better closing. Obviously, spoilers for Can't Fear Your Own World, but just watch this video because you're probably not going to read that anyway. And let's get right into it. Some of Bleach's biggest strengths is probably its plot twists. Throughout the entire series, there'll be these moments where things kind of don't really seem to make sense until a plot twist is revealed, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And this final arc is the biggest one of all. We of course learn about the 5 noble families, and how they cut off the Soul King's arms to separate the different worlds. A quick recap on that tale. So there was Reo, of course, in the world before it was separated. He was the first person to step in between Hollows and humans and stop the Hollows from eating the humans. Now, there were more people with power, those being the 5 noble families. He was the most powerful, and to this day, still is the most powerful. While the 5th clan seems to be erased from history, letting us focus on the 4 noble clans, these clans being the Kuchiki, Shihoin, Shiba, Tsunayashiro, and some mystery 5th one, all with different motives to capture Reo and make him stabilize the worlds. The Tsunayashiro feared that Reo might someday turn on him using his power. The mystery ancestor believed that a lid was needed to keep hell in check. Kuchiki believed that a new order was needed to guide the world into stability. The Shihoin believed that an even greater cycle of circulation was needed to progress the stagnant world forward. And Shiba believed that it was necessary to explore the route of purification rather than destruction for Hollows, as Hollows also had minds. Their motives led them all to the same goal, to separate the current world. So they created specific worlds for life and death, like how humans are born in the human world and then they die and go to the Soul Society. And then there's people who are born in the Soul Society. They have a certain amount of spiritual pressure, they get sent to hell in order to maintain balance. When Hollows are born in many sizes and variations of spiritual pressure, obviously, after eating one another, if they are eventually killed, then they too will end up in hell if they have too much reishi. But if not, it'll just be redistributed across Hueco Mundo. And this is that said cycle of life and death. It seems this was put in place simply to maintain balance, as if it was not, then the 3 worlds would cease to exist. And when Reo was eventually put into the crystal, he didn't resist. They cut off all his body parts as if to separate all his, and took out multiple of his organs. Hence why parts of him can be found almost everywhere. And even just the tiniest piece of him is incredibly powerful, giving birth to the Fullbringers, as Fullbring was just a smaller version of Reo's power. The same way Fullbringers could attach themselves to something and to an object and will it into being something else, that's exactly what Reo could do to the entire world. After the disembowelment and leaving him in the crystal, the 5 noble clans led on to create what is now known as the Soul Society. And that brings us closer to present day, when, in the course of history, then was the first Quincy invasion, which created the 13 court guard squads, out of a bunch of savages who were labeled as protectors. Over time, and over peace, the court guard squads became softer, as can be seen as the comparison to the Quincy's, led by Yuabaha, the son of the Soul King. Not to mention that the Soul King was all 4 races at once. To think that he was even a Hollow as well. And the way the Soul Society, the court guard squads had become soft compared to all the way back then, was seen firsthand by how savage the Quincy's were, and behaved towards each other. The 5 Bambis being a prime example of the way they abuse each other relentlessly, and insult each other almost all the time. That's also why they end up coming back in this final chapter, because yes, they did survive, thanks to Mayuri. But the real focus of the story is on Squad 9, whose insignia is the white poppy, a flower that symbolizes remembrance for all victims of war, a commitment to peace, and a challenge to the glamorization of conflict. This is what Squad 9 is. There's a distinct focus on Kaname Tosen in this novel. As you all know, Kaname Tosen devoted his life to justice after his friend was killed by her husband. A conversation between Tosen and Aizen revealed that after Aizen planned to replace Reo himself, that story about the foundation of the Soul Society was the one missing piece we needed to fully understand why Tosen and Aizen acted the way they would. The plan after Aizen had risen to the state of Reo as the new Soul King was that Tosen would kill himself, as his purpose would have come to an end. Aizen asked Tosen, "If there's anything you want, I will give it to you." And Tosen said, "What I want is a warning." Quote, "I do not know the light, nor do I know the colors of the world. If a time comes when I learn about these things, and I see and hope and pleasure in the remade world, and forget my fear. At that time, perhaps, I will stop being a warrior. As we know, Kaname Tosen values fear above all else. If you do not fear your own sword, then you don't deserve to hold it. This final fear factor of a philosophy is what he passed down to his lieutenant, Hisagi, who is the main character of this light novel, if I haven't mentioned that already, which is so in-depth that I only just had to mention that now. And a regular person who dies in the Soul Society is reincarnated as a human with no past memories, who of course had to deliver the killing blow to his own captain, who was then extinguished by Aizen, as according to their promise, if Tosen eventually started to see that he was adjusting his vision to the world as it always was, instead of trying to see it for what it could become, for accepting the world how it already operates, instead of seeing it for the greatness that it could become, then he should be put down, as Aizen just did, claiming it was not as punishment, but as mercy. The husband and assassin of Kaname Tosen's friend, Tokinada Tsunashiro, and the main villain of this arc, was watching the entire fight in Karakura Town. He is also the head of the visuals department, because the Tsunayashiro family is in charge of that as well. Tokinada Tsunayashiro feels that he is the punishment for the sins of the Soul Society, though you may have already found that out through YouTube shorts, and seeks revenge on the Soul Society, this time not wanting himself to become the Soul King, but rather a puppet king, Hikone Uboginu, who was from a lower ranking family that served the Tsunayashiro family, who had been combined with Hollow and Quincy traits, which should be impossible, as well as wielding a Zanpakuto, thus making them a Soul King candidate. Tsunayashiro's motivations include having fun tormenting others and writhing in their despair, and also just doing whatever he wants for his own pleasure. One of the points he makes is that isn't everybody fighting for their own pleasure? As if they want to make the world a certain way according to their pleasure, which really isn't wrong. All factions in Bleach do. Speaking of factions, Execution comes back, but has been rebranded to a religious institution, with their new head, Ora Michibane. Well, technically, the president is that freaking blonde nerd kid, but a lot of people come up when I try to search his name, so I just won't bother. But he's more of a puppet leader, while Ora is the real one who gave them 770,000 followers. You see, Ora never felt any connection to the world as it is. She wants to seek a greater world, teaming up with Tokinada, who's also manipulating Hikone, using Hikone to create a new one. But over the events in this novel, Ora realizes that she loved Hikone as a mother, and Hikone loved her as a child as well. Her last-minute betrayal of Tokinada is not attributed to good, is not attributed to evil, but she did it because she felt like it. Saving Hikone was to her pleasure. Also, she has part of the Soul King in her, like a more significant amount than the usual Fullbringer. In Hikone's Zanpakuto, Tokinada, during the war, stole from Uetsu's storage an ancient Zanpakuto that was not properly sealed, which was a hollow that used to terrorize Waco Mundo, that wasn't properly sealed because Uetsu hadn't perfected his methods to the point where it would be perfectly sealed within its Asauchi. So it was actually alive. Other people could hear it talk, not just as a spirit, but because it was a real hollow. The reason it wasn't just destroyed was because it would ruin the balance, a reason for many of the things in Bleach. And Ikomiki Domoe's existence in itself is a testament to the sins of the Soul Society. Now, Hisagi, who is the Serete Bulletin, now Squad 9 is the Gote 13 security force, but their speciality also lies in the arts and culture. Hence, a valid explanation for why Hisagi has a motorbike, yes, a motorbike from the world of living, even a guitar, or maybe a few. Also, just look at him. But oddly, he found that his fear was really what kept him fighting. His Zanpakuto kept asking him for an offering, because he had been trying to unlock Bankai recently, but it just kept on saying things along the lines of, give me an offering, a sacrifice, or give me your blood. And he kind of just strayed away from that. Probably because he was scared. Yes, you can be scared and then not engage with something, but then you can also be scared and jump into it as well. And that's exactly what Hisagi did. During Hikone's fight with Kenpachi, he told Kenpachi to stray off. And after Kenpachi heard Yachiru agree with him, then he actually backed off. Cut right here. Tokinada would call assassins to assassinate himself and then assassinate them. That's a little peek into the type of fun he's into. While Hikone was literally in her resurrection or Bankai or some kind of second form, I don't think she really said anything when she did it actually. Hisagi put himself in between them. In his eventual meeting with Ora, yes, that's her name, she says that Hisagi is the most Soul Reaper-like Soul Reaper. This can be seen in the way that his call-out for his Zanpakuto is literally Reap Kazeshini. While listening to the fan dub, this caught me off guard, as it sounded like he was saying something else. Tsunayashiro himself wanted him to report on his recent promotion, as he had killed the entirety of the Tsunayashiro family except for himself. Nonetheless, Hikone tried to cut down Shuhei, tried to cut him multiple times, but every time he would mysteriously be put back together, again and again and again. She may have killed Hisagi about 20 times during this fight. Looking for an explanation to this, Hisagi then says, Bankai, Fushi no Kyojo, or Hangman's Noose. Hisagi's Bankai is Stillness. It wraps chains around himself and around one other person. The chains come from a black sun that itself is made out of chains. And when someone attacks, the attacker's reishi gets absorbed into those chains into the black sun, whilst the person who got hit gets healed, is put back to normal. All the wind in the reishi stops moving. It makes the air gray and is in complete stillness. The Soul King is put in a constant state of advancement and stillness, in a half-death or in an untrue death. Hisagi's Bankai is very similar to this, but it's simply stillness. Most of the villains of Bleach wanted an advancement in the world, in the Soul Society, in the three realms itself, and there was a sentiment that it had to be done through fighting, through sacrifice. In this Bankai, Hisagi literally forces Hikone to stop and think about what she's done. She lived to serve Lord Tokinata, but after his supposed death, she still fought for him, even though he didn't care at all for her. Quote, "That thing simply believes things are meant to be the way they are. It is the result of me not teaching them anything else, and also Hikone never attempting to learn anything else. I never resorted to award or punishment." Hisagi teaches her that just because the world didn't have a good start, or may not even really be built upon anything but as righteous as it seems, or as it claims to be, that is no reason to upend it and try to destroy it and start over. But the world that you so want to live in could happen right now, without any fight, but with stillness. Hisagi says he uses his fear to fight, but I feel like he wasn't fearing here. It's the moment he stopped being afraid of his own world. He may feel fear while in battle, but he taught Hikone that you can't fear your own world. Oddly, after this confrontation with almost everyone watching, Hikone is allowed to live in the Serete, far away in a shack, isolated by her own decision. Hisagi comes to visit her every now and then, still reporting on the other worlds for the bulletin, for the people in Rukongai who can't travel between worlds. And he wants to broaden their view of the world, or the worlds. Maybe fear is why everybody in Bleach fights something. Fear that they'll destroy the Soul Society. Fear that your father will forever be sealed in a crystal. Fear of being betrayed. Fear of not doing the right thing. Tokinata, after being wounded in a battle against Shunsui, Hisagi, Nanao, and Shinji, was assassinated by a random assassin. Not any noble or member of the squads, but just a random nobody, according to him. While Mayuri, who has a great interest in experimenting in many things, did not find any interest in Tokinata himself, rather reading a book as he lay there dead. Tokinata operated out of fear himself, fear that somebody would get him, so he decided to use his power first. This is the curse of the Tsunayashiro family, and with the death of it, symbolically means a better future for the Soul Society. Mayuri released a good amount of his Quincy experiments. This led to a decade of peace in the Soul Society, because Hisagi taught us that yes, you should fear your sword, otherwise you're not worthy of using it. And that's the place where your fear should be. Because if you're wanting to change your environment into a better place, then you can't fear your own world. Don't forget to subscribe. I have 763 subscribers right now, but you can make it 764 if you press that button. And I do have more Bleach videos already out. Be sure to answer the next poll that comes up. And obviously, don't forget to subscribe. But you already did, didn't you? It was all part of my plan. Thanks for watching.